happened? Well, hockey is back, everyone. Yeah, I know it's just the preseason, but it's a game, and it's the first hockey game that I've watched cover to cover since the World Junior Championships ended, and so I'm just excited that there's something to talk about, even though it's just the first game of the preseason versus the Colorado Avalanche. Now, I'm sure we've all seen the score by now. Golden Knights lose 3-1 to the Colorado Avalanche. Kind of a bummer, but it's the first preseason game, and the best part of it is we're still tied in the standings with the Avs right now. So, hey, I mean, we'll take what we can get. So looking at the lineup, because it was a split squad game. At the time of recording this, the other part of the squad is in Vegas, getting ready for the game tonight against the LA Kings, preseason game number 2. So the lineup looked, first line was Carrier, Kolasar, and then Howden, Dean, Ronberg, Cotter, Morozov, and Dorofeev, and Lecision, Frus, and Amadio. Now that's there's some NHL regulars in there. There's some players who are pushing for roster spots in that bunch. So all in all, it's just a good mix of players, especially for the first game of the year. And the goaltending matchup wound up being Hutchinson and Patera versus Georgiev and Johansson. So that is our third, fourth, and fifth goalie versus their first and third goalie for the Colorado Avalanche. So the goaltending matchup is a little bit lopsided, but when has that ever bothered us anyway? So then we got ready to drop the puck. First period's underway, and I'm as excited as I'll get it. I've got my popcorn, I'm watching it on the TV, and the Golden Knights look pretty good right off the start, drawing a very, very, very early power play when Middleton got called for cross-checking at 3:58 of the first period. I'm like, okay, cool. We get to see what this Bruce Cassidy power play is all about. And it was chugging along pretty well. We were getting some pretty decent zone entries, all things being equal, getting in. Not really any shots on goal, but there were some decent chances. That was until it was completely washed away by too many men on the ice penalty, which is kind of sad. So then the play shifted to 4-on-4 at about the 5-minute into the game mark. Morozov looked pretty solid on the 4-on-4 part, had a couple of decent rushes, but still not really any shots on goal. And then when the 4-on-4 ended, it's pivoted over to a Colorado power play, which was pretty low event as it was. Pretty soon after the penalty is expired, White Cloud is ranging back on a chip out of the defensive zone or out of the offensive zone by the Colorado Avalanche. He kind of gets a little lazy. It's the first preseason game, so he's still trying to figure out where he is. And he gets beat by two Avs players who set up a slick 2-on-0, and it passed across the slot. Looks like it's going to be just tapping. And Michael Hutchinson comes out of nowhere with a poke check to save what I think would have been a very good scoring opportunity and possibly a goal for the Avs. And so following that, there was still a lot of pressure, and it wound up leading to a penalty that the Golden Knights took. This is going to become a theme, unfortunately, which was Amadio got caught for tripping at 8:01. This penalty kill was really, really, really solid. I counted at least 4 shot blocks over the course of this PK, which leads me to think that perhaps this system that Cassidy's installed when it comes to penalty kill is actually going to be effective, because it looked pretty solid right from the jump. So we killed off the penalty. There wasn't a lot going on there. And then there was a very long stretch pass. Hutchinson set up, left the puck from Morozov, who fired the puck up the ice to Waugh, sending him out in all alone on a breakaway. Just came up a little short, just didn't quite get there, didn't score. But it was a good opportunity. It was the Knights' first true scoring opportunity of the game, so I can't really complain about that, especially given that it was before the halfway mark of the first period. Beyond that, the game was chugging along. There wasn't a lot going on. That was until a shaky turnover led to the Knights' third penalty of the period. Howden got caught for holding at 14:33 of the first period. That sent us to just another penalty kill, which was pretty solid. But Hutchinson made a couple of really good saves, especially one at the very end on a point shot, which wasn't screened. So he saw it all the way in, and he made a decent save on it. And he looked solid in net, which is all we can ask for, especially in the first preseason game. And beyond that, there wasn't really any pressure left for the Avs to throw at us to begin with. As the time continued to wind down, there was a good chance for Amadio with about 2 minutes left in the game, 2 minutes left in the period. but he didn't get a lot of good wood on it. But this was set up by a really good keep from White Cloud on the blue line, keep the puck in, feed it down for a tic-tac-toe play that wound up just missing. This chance continued to lead to a lot of pressure where Dean sent it in. He basically came flying down the wing on a rotation play into the center of the ice and drew a penalty in the process of doing a decent scoring opportunity. He drew a hook, which led to the Knights' first full power play. And God only knows they didn't take long, because very early in the power play at 19:08, Paul Cotter put the Knights up 1-0. Now, this was a really good play. The power play looked pretty solid. Like, there wasn't really a lot to do. He fired it short side post in, off the post and then off of Georgiev on a pretty sick feed from Nick Waugh from behind the net. So that's optimistic from an NHL regular to an NHL pro, or to a guy who's on the fence of making the NHL. He made it look super, super easy. And with that, the first period ended. Golden Knights up 1-0. A couple of stats that I took away from the first period that I thought were important were the Golden Knights were leading in faceoff percentage 63% to 36%. They were leading in hits 9-3, leading in shots 10-9, and most importantly, they were winning the special teams battle 1-for-2 as opposed to 0-for-3. So a decent first period, and there's plenty to build off of going into the second period. And with the start of the second period, really continued the Golden Knights' pressure on the Avalanche. They wanted to be able to add to that 1-goal lead that they took into the intermission, and it didn't take them long to get going with a really early chance on a 2-on-1. Jonas Rondbjerg firing it. He just missed the net. He just missed. And it was definitely earmarked for the back of the net. So I figured that was a good point, or basically a good takeaway from what he was doing in that period, or what he was doing throughout the game, but just to kick off that period and get started solidly, that was a decent thing. Not only was Rondbjerg on it, Braden Pahal was on it. He absolutely launched one from the point, and it was almost tipped in by Howden. Unfortunately, this momentum that we built in the first couple of minutes of the second period was immediately killed by Hayes taking a roughing penalty. I wasn't quite sure about the penalty, but it was a rough, so I'll leave it at that. This put the Golden Knights on their fourth penalty kill of the game. It was at this point that I had to laugh. The Colorado broadcasters, because I was watching the game on NHL Network, they kind of poked fun at Jack Eichel and Phil Kessel as, being those two weird guys who play for Vegas now. And I don't know, it made me realize how much I missed watching the broadcast with Dave and Shane on AT&T Sportsnet, just because they do a really good job, and I've never really been a fan of the Colorado Avalanche broadcast team anyway, so this just gave me another reason to not overly like them that much. The fourth penalty kill for the Golden Knights was a lot more, touch and go. There was a lot going on when it came to the Avalanche registered a lot of shots over the course of this fourth penalty, and Hutchinson had to make 3 pretty solid saves to keep the Knights in the game. A couple of cross-crease passes, a couple of one-time saves. He looked very solid in net. And so that's something that is a good positive takeaway from that PK, is that while the shots were good, they were relatively low percentage as long as the goalie was in the right position. And so the fact that he was in the right position made them pretty easy saves, albeit still impressive. So they killed off the penalty pretty easy. And a player that really stood out to me early in the game was Lucas Cormier. Now, I've been seeing him play in his junior career a lot, and I've always been a huge fan of him as a player. And he was very, very strong on the puck and in the defensive zone. And he showed that off by drawing a penalty 180 feet away from the Colorado net, which was a hooking penalty, thus putting the Knights on another power play. The power play wasn't really productive when it comes to chances, but it was relatively solid in structure. They had the puck in the zone for a lot of the time, but there just wasn't a lot going on in terms of offense or shots. It was a good structurally sound power play, so we can't really complain about it from a fan's perspective, especially because half the players on the ice aren't exactly NHL talent anyway. A couple of them could be, but the ones that were out there on the power play primarily were the younger players who the coaches don't get to see get reps every day. It was at this point that traditional preseason BS comes in, and both teams switch their goalies. We switch out for Yuri Patera, and the Avalanche switch out for Jonas Johansson. This is about the 10-minute mark of the second period, so about halfway through the game. It was shortly after the goalie switch when Hayes absolutely destroyed Rodriguez of the Colorado Avalanche, getting called for boarding at 11:40. I thought it was a very big hit. He was not in any sense of the imagination a clean hit, but it was still a fun one. So it made me jump out of my chair a little bit until I realized it was the fifth penalty of the game. Um, as had been so often the case through this point, the Colorado Avalanche couldn't really do anything on their power plays right up until the very end when Bowen Byram absolutely annihilated the post. But it wasn't on the scary side of the post, so there wasn't really any chance it was going to go in. It just, gave everybody, it made everybody's heart rate go up a little bit. So that was, I guess it was the sign that the tide was leveling out a bit, that the Knights no longer had the forward advantage, and that the Avalanche were starting to turn the tides on their game a little bit, which was immediately halted by Cormier drawing yet another hooking penalty from the same guy who got him for hooking earlier in the second period. This was another good spring pass on the power play from Cotter up to Wap, sent him in all alone, but he wasn't able to get the clean shot away. And that was basically all that the power play had for the Knights on that occasion, which is kind of a bummer. That would have been a good moment to take a manhandle on the game, go up 2-0 on the power play, score a second power play goal of the game, but alas, it was not meant to be. A very questionable call sent the Golden Knights to their sixth penalty kill of the game, which is tripping along the boards. I don't know how that was tripping, other than how he may have gotten a little close to his feet. It was one of the few questionable calls in a very, very penalized game. So I'm not really going to question it, and I can't really complain because there was a lot of shot blocks. I've really got to tip my hats to Bischoff and Howden on the end of that penalty kill, right near the end of the period. Basically took a lot of high-grade scoring opportunities and turned them into nothing, not even shots on goal, because they put their body in the right place. So at the end of the second period, in the game was a lot more lopsided towards the Avalanche at that point. The Knights getting outshot 10-5 in the period, but the penalty kill for the Knights was 3 for 3, which was nice, and we were winning the face-off battle at the time in the game 21-15. So the possession was favoring us, we just weren't getting the shots. So we were winning in the majority of the categories I think are important for winning hockey games. Primarily penalty kill, the special teams battle, and winning faceoffs. So going into the third period, the hope was for them to get a couple of more shots and try and find a way to extend that lead. Now, that would have been a really good thing to have happen going into the third period, and yet that is in no way, shape, or form what happened. The Golden Knights did not take long getting onto their seventh penalty kill of the game when Pahal got caught for tripping 40 seconds into the period. And you have to expect as a fan, when your team is taking that many penalties, that they're not going to remain perfect on the penalty kill. And that's exactly what happened. Quick cross-crease feed led to a one-timer from the right point, which just flew by Patera. Bocage from McDonald and Foodie at like the 2-minute mark or the 1-minute mark of the third period. So at that point, it's 1-1. That's not the start to the third period that you're hoping for if you're a Knights fan. It's exactly what you wanted to see if you're an Avalanche fan, and that's just not great. Now, the conventional wisdom would say that you need to just stay out of the box and focus on making sure to get the game under control, try and balance it out. Clearly, Howden missed the memo because he immediately got caught for tripping at 1:58, putting the Knights on their 8th penalty kill. Fortunately, the Avalanche weren't really to get much going over the course of that power play. They had like one shot on net, and there wasn't really a lot going on in the game for a good chunk of that third period. Middle of the third period, the game really started to open up, but there weren't really a lot of high-quality chances. There was a lot of skating, a lot of passing, and a lot of shots that hit the goalies right in the insignias. So there wasn't really a lot going on. They were playing hockey, yeah, but they weren't playing hockey. That was until Michael Amadio turned a really good forecheck into a turnover, and he just missed a wide-open Whitecloud flying down the left side of the ice, which I'm not saying it would have been a goal, but it definitely would have been the first high-scoring chance that the Knights have had since the middle of the second period. So it would have been a moment for the Knights to try and get the game back. It was 1-1 at that point. If that puck goes home, it's 2-1, and but it didn't even wound up resulting in a shot on net. So it was just one of those things where we can look back on it with the benefit of hindsight and said, oh, what would have happened if that had gone in, or if that pass had been cleaner. And as has been so often the case with the Knights in this game, penalty trouble comes back to bite them. Pahal gets caught for tripping again at 12:25 of the third period. And again, you can't take that many penalties and expect to get away from it clean. Early on in the power play, JT Compher is setting up below the right circle, and he just fires it home short side on Patera up by the ear. I used to play goalie. That's a hard spot to save anyway, but that's one you kind of have to have, especially in a tie game. I'm not going to say he was a little off his angle or anything against Patera. It is the preseason. But from a fan perspective, that's one you want your goalie to have. And from a shooter perspective, it was a really good shot. So that made the game 2-1. It was Compher from Rodriguez and Cogliano, which was just, that kind of took the wind out of my sails a little bit. One of the stats that really alarmed me, which leads me to believe that penalties were really the killer of this game. With 6 minutes to go in the third period, 2/3 of the Avs' total shots on the game came on their power plays. They had like 18 shots. I think it was like 18 of their 29 shots or something at that point of the game had all come on power plays. So if you're going to give the reigning Stanley Cup champions that many penalties and that many power play opportunities, you're going to get bit by it eventually. So following their power play goal, the Knights try to get something going in the offensive zone, and they wound up pulling another penalty, getting to go back on the power play, hooking at 14:35. And I even typed up on my script, hopefully this one does something, and it wound up not really doing anything at all. The Knights lost the opening faceoff on that power play, and then never really were able to get the shot, or never really able to get the puck back in the zone until the dying seconds of the power play, where they recorded 2 quick shots. The best opportunity that the Knights had was at about the 17-minute mark of the third period. There was a good point shot from Hutton from the right point, which was tipped by Cotter in the high slot, then caught a Colorado defenseman, kicked out to the right, and Morozov was right there. He just wasn't able to get a clean handle on the puck and fire it home before the defender got there, and then the goalie got back over. So it was a good opportunity, but it, again, didn't result in a shot on net. Following the whistle, Patera was pulled, and the Knights called timeout to try and draw up a play. Ultimately, they wound up winning the faceoff, losing possession, and Byron fires at home for the empty net goal to make it 3-1. We just couldn't get in the zone after losing the faceoff after the timeout. It's just one of those things that happens. It just is. It's a little bit of a bummer, but it's just hockey. It's not a big deal. So time winds down. The Knights aren't really able to muster very much. They put up a little bit of a fight there in the last minute, registering a shot or two. But at that point, it was too little too late, and there wasn't really anything that anyone could do to alter the outcome. So horn sounds, Colorado wins 3-1. A couple of post-game stats that I think are important. The Knights were outshot 30-23. They lost the special teams battle 2 for 9 to 1 for 5. But they did win the faceoff battle 55% to 45%. And that was helped along by Morozov by Morozov and then all the centers in particular having a pretty decent day at the dot. So that's something that we can take away as fans as an optimistic thing, that we had players winning faceoffs, which if we've been watching the team for more than a year, that's been a recurring issue. But beyond that, the stats looked kind of ugly. We were out-hit. We were outskated. They out-time possessed us. We had more giveaways, less takeaways. The stat line wasn't very pretty. It was about what you'd expect for a 3-1 loss in the preseason. Now, there are some positive takeaways. There were a couple of players that I really, really liked over the course of this game, one of them being Lucas Cormier. His name came up a lot in my rundown because he drew a lot of penalties. He was a very solid defenseman. He's got a bit of a cannon from the blue line, and he's just a smart player. He made a lot of smart decisions with the puck. He made a lot of good moves, and he was aggressive on the forecheck. He made good passes. He drew penalties. He's everything that we want to, and especially with Nick Hague's contract situation up in the air, he's one of the players who is probably trying to play his way onto the main roster for the NHL season. And so that's if that's his end goal, that's a very good first indication of what he's trying to get accomplished. He was one of the more solid players on the ice all night. Likewise, another solid player who we've seen before with the Golden Knights is Paul Cotter. He played very, very well tonight, with whether it be the long feed pass up to Waugh to spring him on the breakaway, or being the only player to score a goal, going short side off the post and then off of Georgiev's back in the first period. There was a lot of positive things we can take away from his game. Similar to that would be Ivan Morozov. Now, in my rookie camp breakdown, I was very critical of how he didn't look like the game breaker that we expected him to be, given that he's been playing professional hockey for a very long time and going up against a bunch of rookies. He looked average. Well, this game, he looked a lot better than average. He, like Cotter and Cormier, made a lot of very smart decisions with the puck. He made a lot of smart passes, and he was in the right place at the right time. And while he may not be trying to play his way onto the roster like the defensemen are, he's doing a very good job of positioning himself as the next man up to be ready in case somebody gets injured in the big club. And if last year's any indicator, injuries are going to be a common thing, unfortunately. The last people that I want to give shout outs to are both the goalies. It's the first preseason game of the year, and Michael Hutchinson and Yuri Patera both looked very solid. I know Hutchinson put up the shutout in the first half, and Patera gave up 2 goals in the second half to lose the game, but let's be honest, neither goalie was really getting a lot of run support from their forwards, and the defensemen were having to block a lot of shots, but they can't block everything, so we can't really blame either of them for the outcome of this game. Now, the cool thing about the preseason is you don't have to wait very long for the next game, as it'll just be a short 24 hours later. The other side of the split squad will be taking on the LA Kings in the Fortress, and goodness knows I'm excited to see that one. Can't wait to see the new center ice dot on TV. Can't wait to see who's going to be in the lineup. I'm going to assume it'll be a couple more high-profile NHL regulars. Hopefully Mark Stone's in the game. I don't count on it, but maybe we'll see Riley Smith, William Karlsson, Jonathan Marchessault, maybe Eichel and Kessel together. Who knows? Preseason's exciting, and just I'll be sure to definitely watch it. It's going to be fun, and goodness knows I'll have a breakdown as soon as I can get it done after the game. So until tomorrow, I suppose. Thanks for watching.